Hey everyone, it's Kirsten. Welcome to Season 3 of the Anthropocene. The scene is set. You meander along the trail, in no big rush today. It is warm, but finally cooler with fall in full swing. You pause to look out across the incredible wetland to your left. Insects buzz busily, and you think you can see a turtle on a log at the far edge of one of the bigger pools. Dipping down to the water and buzzing away quickly, a dragonfly has grabbed its lunch. You hear many bird calls, and though you think you can decipher a few, you're not here for birds today. You scan the ground as you walk along. Reeds and other water-hungry plants poke out of the water's edge, and finally you see a clump of what you are looking for. You get out your camera, your ID guide, notebook, and crouch down for a closer look. Such an alien-looking plant, with the weirdest behavior to boot. Waiting patiently for something to drop down into its extremely well-adapted leaves so that it can have a snack? You smile to yourself and decide to sit. You begin to sketch the elongated leaves with gaping mouths. This is a new species for you. You might be here a while. And hello, everyone. It is Kirsten, and I am so excited to be back here, and I have my first guest for Season 3. We are here today with Conservation Ecologist Hali'a Eastburn. Hali'a, I'm so happy to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for painting that picture. It really just reminds me of the first time I walked into my first bog and saw pitcher plants in the wild for the first time. Just perfectly painted.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I've been in my fair share of wetlands, but more north. So yeah. I did have to Google. I was texting wetlands and was just doing this little kind of tour through Google pictures and try to get a hold of it. And then just trying to meld of what I know of a warmer climate versus the wetlands. You know, where I grew up, we had these sloughs and stuff, but in the Yukon. And so it's just grasses and coniferous trees, and it's beautiful, but it's totally a different ecosystem. So yeah.
I actually grew up on the West Coast, and our wetlands are different. We have salt marshes and things like that.
Right.
And so I didn't ever see a swamp, a bog, or anything like that until I moved out to Texas. And, and so it's been pretty magical, though.
That's so cool. Yeah. So, I mean, for everybody, I'm super excited because today we're talking about one of nature's neatest oddities, in my opinion. The pitcher plants, carnivorous plants in general. I'm not going to lie. I had to Google which part of the pitcher plant was the pitcher. I was like, is this an adapted flower? And I was like, no, it's a modified leaf, you noob. Of course it's a leaf. But, I've seen them before, only in botanical gardens, but I was like, what even is this?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't get to see them. If they see them in a garden or in the store or something like that, they usually don't see them when they're flowering, when they're blooming. And so it's very common for people to assume that the traps themselves are also the flowers, or that they don't have flowers at all. But they're pretty normal plants in that respect, that they have leaves and flowers and all the regular parts.
Right. That's so cool. We will dive back into that, but I kind of got ahead of myself and excited. I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit for the audience. Yeah, sure. Tell us a bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Hali'a Eastburn. I actually got my start in wildlife rehabilitation years ago. And that kind of led me to pursue my bachelor's in biology from University of Florida. And during that time, I took a lot of entomology courses, and I was growing carnivorous plants, but on the side as a hobby. And it wasn't until after I graduated that I started doing a ton of field work, and surprised it involved insects because that's what I was good at, or that's where I had skills. And then I also incorporated plants because I kind of knew enough from my hobby and from my work in school to do plants. But looking at all those interactions, through my field work and through my coursework and stuff like that, I just was super fascinated by just how foundational the relationship between insects and plants really is to health of ecosystems and diversity of ecosystems and all of that. And so I was really into pollinator communities for a long time. But in the back, I was growing these carnivorous plants, just kind of as a hobby. They're cool. I met a lot of really cool people growing them too. So it was a fun community to be a part of.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was looking for grad school programs, and I stumbled upon Texas Christian University out here in Fort Worth. And there was one professor, Dr. Horner, and he's like one of the only professors in the United States that's studying carnivorous plants. And I was like, I got to do it. And so jumped into the program, and now I work for a carnivorous plant nursery, and I'm still doing carnivorous plant research and education and things like that. And I'm like, wow, this hobby that I didn't think much of has now turned into like a whole career, line for me. And so it's been a lot of fun though. And
that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you never know, like, I mean, when you study to be kind of, especially an ecologist or like a biologist, like where it can take you.
Yeah, exactly.
You start with bugs, maybe you end up with plants, you end up with birds, you move all over the place, and that's what makes it exciting. That's so cool.
It is. It's so cool.
Awesome. We'll have to nerd out about bugs some other day as well. Yeah, that would be great. All right, so this is kind of a good segue to ask then, like, what the heck is a carnivorous plant? Like, what are they? How do you look at them, classify them?
Yeah.
A little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So carnivorous plants have evolved 6 different times in nature, and they've essentially come up with this adaptation to, instead of get their nutrients from the soils, they get them from their insect prey. And this is because where they're most often found, actually where they're only found are ecosystems where there's not a lot of nutrients available for plants. So bogs and things where the ground is super saturated, where there's heavy metals in the soil, you'll often find these plants because not a lot of the other things can live there. In rainforests, where the soil itself is very nutrient poor because all of those nutrients are in the biomass of the plants, you're going to find these plants as well.
Right.
And they're thriving off of this really low nutrient soil, and supplementing what they need from catching insects instead. Although they have adapted to consume other type of prey items like feces from vertebrates and things like that, or even just leaf litter. Some of them are really good at getting nutrients just from fallen leaf litter on the forest floor. And so it's just another way that plants have adapted to undesirable situations and filled this really special niche in these environments.
Yeah, that's super cool. Really crazy. Do they still photosynthesize? I would assume maybe a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that kind of depends on the plant. There are like over 600 species of carnivorous plants. Most of us only think of like things flytraps, but there's so much diversity. And so some of them have a separate leaf, and that's where they photosynthesize. And then their trap is doing a separate job. They're just getting food.
Okay.
And some of them, their trap is also their leaf. And so they're trying to balance photosynthesizing and catching prey, and like they're kind of not good at doing either one, but they balance it just enough that they can get by. And that's how a lot of these plants survive, like just by the skin of their teeth are they like getting by with like crappy photosynthesis and like just enough bugs to like get just enough nutrients to do what they got to do. So
okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. And I mean, it's the whole hashtag depends on the species, right? Because there's so many different ones that you can talk about and so many different things. But yeah, this is really cool because you mentioned too that, sometimes they get in vertebrate feces and that kind of thing. So how do they bring in those kind of foods? I mean, we know the Venus flytrap is kind of the famous one, but what are some of the strategies from the other pitcher plants?
Right. So the pitcher plants that are native to North America that you're going to find here in the South, and then there's also tropical pitcher plants that you're going to find in Southeast Asia. They have these elaborate tubes or pitchers, like little jugs. And around the lip of the jug, there's all of these nectaries that are exuding smells and sugars and things like that. And that's really what's luring in the insects. And what's really interesting in North American pitcher plants is the volatiles that they exude throughout the season actually changes so that they can get different bugs as the season progresses, because as we know, the types of insects that you see throughout the season really changes. And so, sometimes you're getting the flies, and then maybe it's beetles, and then maybe it's, butterflies and moths towards the end of the year, stuff like that. And so at the beginning of the year, the volatiles that these pitcher plants exude are like fresh grass, like fresh cut grass. Or like really succulent leaves that's going to bring in all the leaf hoppers and all of those herbivorous insects that are normally eating at grasses. They're like, we're going to eat you up instead. And then towards the end of the season, they actually rely, this is kind of gnarly, they rely on the stench of all of the accumulated prey in their pitcher to bring in other insects that are going to like eat those dead insects within their pitcher, and then they eat those too. And so they're very opportunistic that way too. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, that seems like a really good strategy to save a bunch of energy, right? Like, you have to, because it's a trade-off. You're attracting all these different kinds of insects, but you have to exude these volatiles, all these different perfumes essentially, or
they're all
produce
very
this nectar.
To make, and so you gotta be really choosy about how you're doing it and when you're doing it and things like that. So
that's really cool. I think that's something that we kind of is really easy to forget about, is like how much the community structure changes throughout a season, like in everything. I mean, there's buds on the trees in the spring, and so that's better for different bugs. And then in the peak of summer, you kind of get like a bit of everything, and then as you wane off, a lot of insects have just in one season their entire life cycle. So
exactly,
that's also going to change what they're eating when.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then they also have to balance bringing in pollinators, because all plants also need to reproduce, and so they put up their flower before they actually open their traps for the season. And so then they don't, so that separation in time helps them not catch their pollinators, but then also their flowers have vastly different scents than their pitchers. The pitcher plants here in North America are primarily pollinated by bumblebees. And so they open their flowers really, really early in the season, because bumblebees are like the first one up, and they get all of that pollen, and then they shut their flowers down and they put their pitchers up for the rest of the year, and they get everything else that's coming through. And so it's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. That was definitely a question coming up, because I know I have seen once a photo, and I think it was of like a Venus flytrap, and their flower was just extremely high up and far away. But like, I feel like the temporal distinction is probably like a better strategy for most of them. Yeah. Okay, that's so cool. So they are angiosperms, and they have flowers and rely on pollinators. And then do they produce like a seed, or how is the reproduction for those guys?
Yeah, so they produce seeds. And some of those are wind dispersed, some of those are water dispersed, because they're in such aqueous environments, and so they utilize different strategies there to disperse their seeds. And that's actually something we're still learning about. There's not a lot of research on that seedling stage and how they spread. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's so cool. Yeah. Just doing their thing to make sure they don't eat the guys helping them out, and then moving along to the next thing. All right. So we talked about how they're pretty much just found in areas that are really low nutrients. And you said they're like just always right on the border, doing the best that they can, like making it work.
Yeah.
But this is going to make them much more sensitive to change. Yeah. I imagine. Exactly. Right. Right. Yes. So it's hard to ask for a broad picture, but like, what does the situation look like for most carnivorous plants, and what are some of the major threats going on with them?
Well, unfortunately, the situation doesn't look great, because these plants are found in wetlands. And as we know, wetlands have been just decimated over the last few hundred years. They're excellent places to pick up resources for humans. Again, those heavy metals are used in technology. Bogs are often where we collect peat for horticulture and things like that. And that resource has been mostly pulled out of those bogs completely. So those environments are gone. We've drained swamps, bogs to build strip malls and houses and things like that. So literally their environments are just going away. And with that goes the plants, because they really can't survive anywhere else. And so unfortunately, we kind of are the major threat as we continue to devalue our own wetlands, which is so silly, because they serve so many purposes for ourselves that we are neglecting as well. And so logging, mining is usually the other threats to these plants in other countries and stuff too. And so, and then of course, there's climate change that's going on, and
Right.
so habitat conversion from those reasons too is not helping. But yeah.
Right. The wetlands thing is so complicated because, like you said, they're such a major source of like clean water for us. They're a carbon sink. They
Protection from
produce a bunch of
storms and like all of that, right?
exactly. And then also, like I lived in a part of a town that was built like kind of on top of a wetland, and when it was raining in the summer, we had one of those sump pumps in the basement that makes sure that your house doesn't flood. And that thing would just run like crazy because we're built on a swamp.
Yeah,
So
Texas is the same way. It's all the floodplain.
okay.
And then it's like
Right.
flooding every winter. You're like, well, what did you think?
Yeah, and I mean the house is like has shifted a little bit, and there's all these things happening because we tried to pave over squishy wet dirt, like so that's something we really have to work on is conserving our wetlands. And I mean I don't know if you know too much about this, but how hard is it to bring back pitcher plants to maybe an area that's restored and recuperated? Is that something that's even possible?
Yeah, so I did a lot of work in just wetland restoration during my grad studies as well. And essentially what you have to do is bring back the hydrology. You have to bring back the water to that area. And you do that by modifying the plant. So a lot of places that were once bogs maybe got colonized by a lot of pines, and now there's too much material there and the water kind of, goes away because the vegetation is so vast and it sucked it all up and stuff. And so what we can do is just open up forests and create savanna. And so that's actually a relatively easy way to do it if you have the land available to do it. But if you're talking about pitcher plants like in the tropics, they're suffering from like mass deforestation. So you'd have to like return old growth trees and stuff like that for those plants to have a habitat again. And so it really depends, again, because these plants are found in a huge variety of different ecosystems. You have to address it like situation by situation. But here in the States, we'd need to bring that water back to those areas, restore those bogs. Which again, I think the water is there. The groundwater is right below the surface. So it would just be enriching that and making sure that water can come up to the surface. Yeah.
Right. So a huge part of that is removing like invasive plants and maybe even plants that are native to the region but aren't like supposed to be in wetlands.
Too many overgrown and things like that. So it's relatively straightforward, but that's not cheap work to do either. Like cutting down a whole bunch of trees, clearing an invasive species, doing all that spraying, like that's a ton of work. It's very, very expensive. And it's really hard to get people to buy in to spending that type of money. Like what municipality or state is going to be like, yeah, we just want more carnivorous plants again or something like that. And those habitats aren't really valued just like for their inherent like existence. And so it's hard to get people to buy in there.
This is unfortunately where like, a lot of times as, ecologists and conservationists, we need to kind of find this like charismatic umbrella species, which if anybody doesn't know that term, it's just like if you protect one organism, then you're going to be protecting like the whole ecosystem. And I mean, like the example that I freaking hate is like panda bears. I hate pandas. Anyway. But, everybody wants to save pandas because they're cute and cuddly and fun. So if you save the pandas, you save the bamboo forests and you save like the insects that are important there. And I guess that's kind of tough in a wetland for us that are like little ecology nerds, like, the amazing invertebrates that you find there and the reptiles and the plants, which is something that is always overlooked is enough. But how do you like get the community to buy into that? Exactly.
Yeah. We're already facing like this, disconnect, this mass disconnect of people from nature. That term plant blindness comes up often and people just really don't know what's around them at all. And so how do you get them to care about some like swampy little pond like out there in the middle of nowhere? Like we need but I think that's what I love about the work I do now. We do so much cool public outreach with the nursery I work for, and here in Texas, like something that I love to tell our customers, I'm like, these are your plants. Like pitcher plants are native to Texas, and like this is yours to own and to like reclaim, and like that's something that that's a message I've really tried to push with people and get them to like, because here, like there's a lot of things about Texas that are really interesting and problematic, but I think something that's really cool about Texas is like they really love being Texas, and like they love everything that's about Texas, and so like when you get them to like own like this is yours, and I think that translates to a lot of people. Like when they take ownership of that, you really see a big shift in how much responsibility they're willing to take, and so yeah, these are native plants to most of the United States. And I know there's this huge native plant like movement going on right now. And so I've been really trying to jump on that train and be like, own this, guys, like reclaim your heritage, your native plant heritage. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely, like you're saying, there's definitely this like resurgence and this like movement right now that people are super excited about, like planting native plants and bringing it back. But I think that's really cool the way that you connected it like more deeply to the culture. Like this is yours, this is from your land, you know, taking that kind of patriotism, I guess, right? And like moving it into that's really powerful. That's super cool. Yeah. So I guess, you know, just little by little, and I mean, it's case by case, you got to figure out like how to get people to connect.
It really is.
I remember, this is a little bit off topic, but there was this really cool story once. Conservation Optimism, they have a podcast too, which is fun. You can go check that out. This is not a sponsored shout out. But they had done, there was this vulture, I can't remember exactly which vulture in a part of India that was like really problematic. And so they started like creating these baby showers for the vultures for when they would have these kids, because baby showers were like this really big part of like the community's culture when there's like a new baby coming. So then they like got these like really like significant women in the groups to start throwing these baby showers for these vultures, and it actually ended up becoming this like tradition for them, and it was like this really cool way to like connect it to the culture. So
that's
I'll try to find the episode and I'll like link it in the show notes too so people can check it out. But I
love that. Something else that we are working with in our company is also like bringing carnivorous plants into people's homes. For a lot of people, these are oddity plants. They're rare. They look weird. Again, like what's the leaf? What part is a leaf? Where's the flower? How do they get water? What are they like? How are they doing plant things? Right. And we're really trying to demystify the fact that they're just like regular plants out there kind of doing what they gotta do. And their care is pretty much the same as many other plants. You'd be surprised by how easy they are to grow next to like, you know, your pothos or your begonias or whatever that you got in your house. And by bringing them into people's homes and just kind of, you know, making them an everyday plant helps people to connect with them. And then maybe they'll seek them out, like where are they in nature? Oh, they're gone. Why? And like start asking those questions on their own. And so that's something that we're really trying to push too as well. And hopefully that start shifting the culture, you know, like little by little, you got to do those little things just to leave them out, and people will change at some point.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because they are, I mean, crazy looking plants. Here in the botanical gardens in Quito, they have some like really, really cool ones.
Really cool.
But I mean, imagine like think about all the crazy tropical plants that like most of North American people have. It's really cool the first time you go to the jungle and you're like, that's my plant. So if you can do that,
you're like in the middle of nowhere, like, oh, that's where they're from. Like, I didn't think you see them in the garden store. You don't even think like that they're in the wild somewhere. Right. And so, same thing.
Yeah. I really, really like that. Definitely finding ways to connect. Something that I kind of want to like trace back to too. That's kind of funny. And I bet is a bit of a struggle for you guys is, that restoring these areas is cutting forest down. And so, for people that aren't necessarily like super, that are like would consider themselves environmentalists, but aren't necessarily like ecologists or biologists, like, the message we've been pushed since like we're little is like plant trees, like we gotta plant trees, like make the forest. So then you're like, we're going to cut down this forest to like fix it.
Yeah, that was a lesson that I had to learn too as I continued my education, because, at certain points in my life, I've been kind of like stereotypical, like tree hugger hippie, like don't do that, like chemicals bad, all that kind of stuff. But what I've learned too by looking at history, by talking to a lot of indigenous scientists and stuff like that, and like learning about their traditions and things like that, is that we actually have a huge abundance of trees right now. We've actually, because when American colonization happened across this continent, at certain points we stopped burning, we stopped cutting down things, and we stopped the traditional way of tending the land. So right now we actually have a huge volume of trees. You see this in California with the big wildfires, and a big reason why we have such bad fires there is because no one's cutting down trees. We've actually let them overgrow, and then they die, and then they're falling all over the place, and it's so much fuel. And so tending the land and having healthy forests means taking out trees sometimes, and having abundance of different types of ecosystems, and having like I can't think of the word, like a mosaic of different ecosystems actually helps to make everything healthier, and more diverse, and with more diverse we get healthier ecosystems. And so that's now what we're trying to create, is mosaics of landscapes that flow, and so you have ecosystems for everything available. Not too much forest, not too much meadows, not too much grasslands or anything like that. You kind of need a little bit of everything in each region. And so, yeah, that is a hard one. I ran into those types of environmentalists a lot in California, working in the utilities. I cut down trees for utilities, and people really didn't want that. But having the wrong trees in the wrong place, having the wrong plants in the wrong place is dangerous, and for the environment and for people and stuff like that. And so you have to be able to let go a little bit to see the bigger picture, and that's the hard lesson for people to learn, I think.
For sure. I also was reading, and we talked about this a little bit in another episode too, where like eucalyptus in parts of California is like this really, and we have the eucalyptus issue here in Ecuador. A lot of the Andes here was reforested with eucalyptus, and in California too. And now, I mean, to people, from the 70s, like if you were born in the 70s, like that's your forest. Those are your trees, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's like a cultural connection.
Of, like, eucalyptus in California, and so
and now they're trying to remove it to put in back the native forest, but there's kind of clash. There was a paper that came out, and they called it like a cultural keystone species.
Yeah, but you also have to remember, like, cultures change and shift over time, and like you can determine, that too for ourselves. Like, what does our culture actually value? Like, what does it actually mean? What are the things that we're actually clinging on to? Like, there's that whole controversy going on right now about like changing names of birds. And it's like, it's the same type of thing. People have these like traditions, these like ideas of how things are supposed to be. But I think what we have to realize is like the way we've been doing things is clearly not working. We're seeing it today. And so we have to make some changes. Like things cannot stay the same, because we won't get a new outcome from what we're doing. And so we have to try new things, and we have to be willing to be creative and to let go a little bit, and see what happens. And that's what humans have been doing for millennia. We've always been trying new things. We've always been experimenting. We're scientists forever. And so we need to try new things. We do it carefully. We do it with intention. We do it with kindness and stuff like that, of course. But we have to try something new. Otherwise, we're going to stay on this hamster wheel. And that's not good.
Yeah. And this is where the communication comes in, with just like finding how to connect to the community and share these different ideas. And, I think something we have as like scientists is difficult to get across to people is like things evolve and change. And like, for sure we had, a paper 50 years ago that said like, all we need to do is plant trees and that'll help. And I mean, that was the best conclusion at the time, but people like, come on, grandma, like, just like,
50
bear
years
with me
is a
2
lot of time
seconds.
to gather so much more data. And like, what does that data tell us now? And 50 years from now, it's going to tell us a different picture, and we're going to have to keep shifting. And that, I think that's just kind of something that we need to get used to, is that things are like, the only constant is change like in the world. And so you have to be willing to just go with the flow and be willing to see new possibilities.
Beautiful. That's really cool. Thanks so much. It's great to get perspective, people that are on the ground, like working with this. What are then maybe like some of the projects, like specific, like one specific project that you've kind of worked on in your current role that you've really had a fun time with, that maybe you want to share a little bit about what you did?
Yeah, so I currently work for a carnivorous plant nursery called Carnivoro. We're here in Austin, Texas. And a big goal of our company is to produce plants that are resilient and beautiful, obviously. And so,
like the modern woman. No, I'm sorry.
So I'm really into Sarracenia. That's what I studied in grad school. And I did my master's work on the reproductive biology. And so I'm all into like, okay, let's pollinate let's selectively breed these plants so that you can have like a little pod of Sarracenia on your porch or, near your farm pond. And it looks beautiful all year round here in Texas. So that's a big goal for us, is to selectively breed plants that have the traits that are going to get them through these next, decades of climate change and things like that, because their environment where they came from is no longer the same either. And so we need to kind of help them survive and have the genetics to withstand all these changes. So that's something that I'm really passionate about doing. And then I'm trying to think of like all the other, we have so many projects going on.
That's okay. Take your time.
Mostly it's just about accessibility. We want everyone to have these plants, have access to them, to learn about them. And so I manage our tissue culture lab, and through plant tissue culture, you can multiply plants really fast. So instead of cutting a plant and you get 1 or 2 out of that cutting, we can get 100. And so through that, we can bring the price of these plants down. We can, make sure that kids can grow them, that teachers can have them in their classrooms, that you don't have to be, a rich guy with, fancy greenhouse in your backyard to grow these plants and enjoy them. And so that's something I think that's really important, because nature is the birthright of everyone. Like, everyone should have access to these plants. And so that's really important to us as well. And then we have a lot of other fun science projects going on that I could nerd out on about all the time, and we're always thinking of new things to do. And so that's been really fun. But mostly it's just getting these plants in people's hands and in their homes and stuff like that. It's been really fun.
Yeah, well, I think like we just said, that connection, like if you could be like, oh, that plant is like so-and-so species, like when you go out, there's just like a different like connection like to your land and fostering that love for taking care of where we live. Because I think we kind of always do this, like instead of appreciating our backyard, it's like, oh, like conservation in the rainforest or here or whatever. But like, how about we start, right where we are and where we're standing?
Your home can be an oasis. It can be a little niche of coziness for your native pollinators and everything like that. Like, you can create a really cool little habitat on your balcony. Like, I live in an apartment and I have a balcony full of plants, and I'm pretty selective about what I have because I want to create an environment. I want them to have access to something, and me too. Like, I want access to that environment too, so I don't have to go out to the park or get away from the city to enjoy all those things as well. And so little by little we'll get there.
That's great. Awesome. Just kind of a little side. Do you feed insects to the pitcher plants if you have them, or do you just kind of like let them do their thing.
Yeah, so if I find dead bugs around my house, that's usually where they go. They'll go into the pitchers, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
It's like a little disposal, like a little compost bin,
Right.
which you would normally have. I also have these really cool plants called pinguicula. They're native to Mexico, and they're like carnivorous succulents. And they actually, their traps are like fly paper, and so they catch all like the little fruit flies in my house. And so I have carnivorous plants kind of working in different areas of my home for different things. And so they feed themselves. Like some of them will feed themselves, and some of them I'll supplement or something like that. Because some of them I have like some tropical plants I grow inside, and so you have to feed those guys. At the nursery, we often find like dead animals or like roadkill, and we'll like put those in the pictures and then like film it, and people love that stuff. So gross. But you can do that too. You can look for insects. Some people really get joy out of that. But you can also just give them like plant fertilizer in their pitchers. They'll eat that too, or dead insects and things like that. I have a jumping spider pet, and I buy her crickets, and then if she doesn't eat all the crickets, they go into the pitchers. And so there's a lot of cool ways, but often they just feed themselves, and they're pretty self-sustaining because that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Cool.
Anyways. Yeah.
Great. That's a great selling point. The ones that are like little sticky traps, like you don't have
they're super cute. They're like really adorable.
Right.
So
okay, well, I'm definitely gonna have to give that a Google afterwards. Cool. Okay, so let's be honest then. In all your time researching and doing this, have you ever just given into the urge just to stick your finger in the bottom there?
Yeah, and it's pretty gross. Like, not gonna lie. It's pretty gross. So the tropical pitcher plants from Southeast Asia, they create this liquid. It's actually a liquid biopolymer. That's like, it's not just like water in there. It's actually like a I don't know how else to explain it, but it's a biopolymer that's like elastic, but also like, liquidy.
It's very squish.
Much squish. And and it's acidic. It's very acidic, and then it creates its own digestive enzymes as things fall in. So like it senses things, and then it produces the correct enzymes to break down what the prey item is, which is genius. Wow. And you'll find that like at certain plants, like certain species of Nepenthes, some of their liquid is like super tacky. Because where they're found in nature is like there's not a lot of bugs in the area, so you'll find the tacky ones at like the tops of mountains where you maybe have like little tiny flies, but like there's not a huge abundance of insects, and so like every insect counts, and so like their liquid is very, very tacky and super sticky. And then the ones down in the lowlands that are like more coastal, there's like so many bugs in hot, humid areas, and so they're like, we don't have to work that hard, and their liquid is like really, it's just like liquidy, just kind of feels like water and stuff like that. It's not sticky. So there's like such difference in the liquids, and we'll be going through the greenhouse every once in a while. There's pitchers hanging everywhere, and if you bonk it with your head, you like get liquid in your hair. You're like, oh man, every once in a while. So yeah, I unfortunately have a lot of experience with the liquid, whether I like it or not. But it's fun. It's fun because like I don't know where else you're going to interact with a plant like that, and so it kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to like test poke all the different kinds of them now, but are any of them like acidic enough to be harmful, like to the skin, or
no? No, I think like if you stuck your finger in a pitcher for months, it would eventually start breaking down your skin or something like that. But this is like trying to break down very minute pieces of material. Like bugs are very small, and there's not a lot to them, and so the acid is pretty good though. Like if the wrong animal jumped in there, it could get eaten, unsuspecting. I think like the largest animal they found in the pitchers is like a baby monkey that got stuck in. And because some of these pitchers get huge, like we have some in the greenhouse that are like 19 inches tall.
Wow. Okay.
And really wide. And so
that's insane.
And then they're filled with liquid. So if you get a baby animal gets in there, they could drown and then they eventually get dissolved. But
right.
But they're going to die from drowning and not from the acid, because
Right.
it can't be so acidic that it's going to like burn the tissues of the plants either. And so
Right.
we're all pretty safe. And the other ones, there's like sundews, which are they have like these big long tentacles, and you can sometimes see those guys. Those also have like sticky traps, and you can touch those and it's just tacky, sticky, feels
Right.
like glue or something like that. The pinguicula, their traps are just kind of like slippery and stuff like that. And so if you touch them, you're ruining those glands temporarily, but they'll make more trap fluid after a while and stuff like that. And you wash it right off your hands. And so these plants are really safe to have around kids and things like that, which is
for sure
great. And it is fun to interact with them. A lot of people get like pretty upset with touching these plants because if you mess with their traps too much, like that's a lot of energy the plant has to use to restore the trap and everything like that. But again, I think it's important that people get to play with them and get to interact with them and build that relationship. And eventually you're like, okay, well, I'm done. Like I got out of my system, and the plant will survive that, and that's okay. They go through a lot worse in the wild, and like they're fine. So.
Well, I was going to say, I think if you're like needlessly just like poking like every single one you see in the wild or something like that's just unnecessary. But like, you know, everything with like a little bit of respect and
exactly.
just, if you want to really like learn about something, you have to interact with it maybe a little bit more on a deeper level.
And they're really robust plants. A lot of them are very woody and very solid. And so whenever we're interacting, with people and these plants, and like touch them, like squeeze them, like feel what these plants are like. They're not delicate in most cases, and it kind of gives people a better feeling of like what they're dealing with. And so I encourage people to touch them with respect, obviously, but be curious.
Yeah. That's cool. I had no idea they got so big, because when you said roadkill, I kind of like had a moment, but it was like buffering and we just moved to the next thing. But I didn't realize that they could get like almost 20 centimeters. Like that's
we'll put a frog in. We'll find frogs, we'll put those in. But with dead rats or something like that, whatever we find in the greenhouse, we'll kind of stick in there and stuff like that. And so whatever can fit in the pitcher will get digested. They're opportunistic. But there are some species that have like low acidity in their pitchers. And you'll actually find species of frogs like living within the pitcher itself. And so there's a lot of cool vertebrates that utilize these plants as part of their life cycle. There's other species of nepenthes that are roosting sites for bats. And they dissolve their feces as they're roosting and stuff like that. And so again, these plants are strongly connected to their environment. They have to adapt to what's there. And they have all these really cool complex relationships. And I think that makes them, again, really cool. I'm an ecologist, so like relationships, like complex relationships in nature, like my jam. And these plants are like these little mini ecosystems, essentially. And that's just really cool to learn about.
Yeah, that's so great. The bat one, I think now that you mentioned it, I've heard of it before, but that's so cool that it just like they get a little house for night, like the plant gets guano, which is super full of nutrients. Like I know if you're in a cave, like, we were doing some work once and it was like where there's shit, there's life, so like they're bringing in all these nutrients and you get a little house that just like cleans up for you. It's excellent.
Nice. So they're nice little compost bins, sustainable compost bins. You can compost them when they're full and get more. And so
excellent.
Really cool.
Well, that's so cool. So if people are, feeling a little worried about carnivorous plant conservation, what's something that you would say that they can do to try to help out, just like, on a individual level?
Again, I would encourage them to learn about like where carnivorous plants are in proximity to them. Like, are there any native species? Go look at them. Go see the sites. A lot of them are now gone or heavily protected or on private land. So obviously be considerate of the places that you're going on to and be respectful of the plants themselves. But find out what's in your area. Find out why those wetlands are going away. And then also think about growing them on your own, there's a lot of really great nurseries that are providing these in an ethical manner. Poaching is a big, big problem with these plants.
Right.
Because they're so valuable, because the price of these has been kind of artificially inflated for so long. Poaching is a big threat to a lot of these plants, especially the ones that are found in like the Philippines and Indonesia. And so make sure you're sourcing your plants from a respectable nursery. There's a lot of people, ours included, where everything is created in-house. So there's no plants coming in from the wild or anything like that. Everything is horticulturally produced. And the plants that you're going to get from a nursery are actually going to be better suited to your growing conditions in your home. And so it's actually better to get plants that are horticulturally produced than wild poached, because you're going to have way more enjoyment from that plant. It's going to survive. You get to enjoy it. And that's ultimately like what I think people are getting plants for. And so spend the extra money to get a really ethically produced plant. There's so many good nurseries out there that do that.
Right.
Don't like buy them off eBay from China.
Right.
It's like, you're like, stop doing that. Like, just go down. Even the ones that you see at Home Depot or Lowe's, those are all like tissue cultured, but that's all ethical practice. There's no wild tissue coming in from those. And so you can buy those too and practice, because it takes a little bit of practice always to figure out a new plant. And so, get the cheap fly traps from Home Depot and then reach out to your local carnivorous plant nursery. Our whole staff is trained scientists. Our whole horticultural staff is biologists, and so is our lab staff. And so we can really help you guys figure out how to grow these plants well. Because there's a lot of garbage information on the internet and stuff like that about how to grow them. And so reach out to the professionals. We're so happy to talk about these plants. We're all huge plant nerds. And usually other nerds too, like we all have reptiles and like I have a spider, like weird stuff like that. And so we're cool people and we love these plants and we just like want to share them with everyone. So really encourage people to do that too.
Awesome. So get out there, learn about it, buy from ethical sources, buy from places that, some of the money goes back into conservation and also like fixing those areas. And if you have kids, teach your kids, spread the love, spread the plant love the plants. The plants need some more love. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed this. To kind of wrap up, I would love for you to tell a little bit where people can find you. I'll obviously link everything in show notes and on Instagram so that it's easy, but just kind of the best places to check you out.
You can contact me. You can connect with me directly. I'm on Instagram mostly these days, and TikTok, even though I don't really post anything there. I'm the Halia'pedia. That's my handle. I have a website, just my name, halia'eastburn.com, I think. And, or you can connect with me through my company, Carnivoro. We're a plant nursery out of Austin. And I'm always happy to, bring plants to your classroom or talk to you about plants and how to better find them and stuff like that. And so please just reach out. Happy to chat plants all the time.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, we'll have those links down so people can definitely follow along. But thank you so much. It was great. I loved nerding out about plants and getting back going with this first episode.
Yes, I'm so excited the pod's back.
Yes, it's going to be a little bit of time till it comes out. If y'all are listening to this, I'm just kind of trying to get some recordings kind of piled up first and kind of get them edited and get back in the groove, but should be out soon. So thanks for everybody for listening. Definitely check out, make sure you're following me and the Anthropocene on all the different social medias. Do have a Patreon that's getting opened up. So just in case that you love me enough to spend less than a Starbucks blonde Americano or whatever that is per month, then you can help out with that too. So thank you so much and see you next time.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you head to the show notes, check out the links of things I might have mentioned in the show, go follow us on social media, and yes, do @ me. I'd love to hear from you, what you think, if you want to be a guest with me, if you have suggestions for future episodes, that would be great. Other than that, we do have a Patreon link as well below if you're feeling like helping support the show, and I can't wait to see you around for next episode. Thanks, bye.